for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
all in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props, or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. With Tony Marinaro.
55 seconds left in the penalty, a minute and 27 seconds left in regulation time. Boston 4, Montreal 3. Lafleur coming out rather gingerly on the right side. He gives it into Lemaire, back to Lafleur.
The sickest Montreal Canadiens podcast.
You're in the ball!
Sports entertainment like no other.
Rejoint, on lui fait perdre la rondelle, une passe devant. Et c'est le dégagement et ce sera la victoire des Canadiens. Coupe Stanley pour les Canadiens. Leur 23e de l'histoire.
You found the dogs! John, you found the dogs! He found the dogs! And all together, they worked a young team to the top. And now, a 24th Stanley Cup banner will hang from the rafters of the famous Forum in Montreal. The Canadiens win the Stanley Cup.
Brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Driven to be different. La Vida TV. Embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination. It's gonna be sick.
Marinaro, the Sick Podcast. Welcome on this Monday, June 19, weeknights between 10 p.m. I shouldn't even say between 10 p.m. and 11 p.m. It's weeknights at 10 p.m. and sometimes it lasts an hour, sometimes a little bit less, and sometimes a little bit more. It is brought to you in part by Energy Transportation Group, recently named by Deloitte and CIBC as one of Canada's best managed companies, the country's leading business award, recognizing innovative and world-class companies. The best managed Canadian companies designation fuels Energy's purpose of creating progress for their customers, their employees, and their communities. Join a winning team and check out Energy's career page for available opportunities. Also, the Sick Podcast brought to you in part by Playground, your premier gaming destination. Playground Summer Million is the must-play poker event of the season. I was there a couple of nights ago, by the way, on Saturday night, featuring 10 championship ring events. Do you know that they bring out the sweet table on Saturday nights? Oh, yeah, and much more. $1 million in guaranteed prize money pools and a $500,000 guaranteed main event located just over the Mercier Bridge, only minutes from downtown Montreal. It is Playground. Also brought to you in part by Brewed in Quebec and a winner of a dozen international awards. Bittt at Tibi offers quality microbrewery beers made with premium ingredients for everyone's taste. Bittt at Tibi. Embrace your true nature. All right, there you have it. A regular on Mondays throughout the season, for the most part, unless the Montreal Canadiens were playing a game or unless he had something planned. But for the most part, he was there most Mondays, and he is back today. Eric Engels of Sportsnet at sportsnet.ca. What's going on?
What's up, Tony?
Did you take in the Grand Prix?
I took in the U.S. Open of golf.
Oh, wow. Really? Okay.
Yeah, I'm a big golf fan, and that's a premier event, and it was an extremely exciting, jam-packed leaderboard with a guy in Wyndham Clark who ended up winning it, and it was amazing to watch.
Were you at any of the Grand Prix parties on Friday and Saturday night?
Nah, I'm a little too old for that.
Yeah, I hear you, bud. I hear you. You're not the only one, by the way. I was at Gesso on Sherbrooke. They had a nice event on Friday. The hotel that's attached to the restaurant on Sherbrooke Street in downtown Montreal is now under their own independent banner. So they had a little 5 à 7, and it was very, very nice. It's a very nice restaurant. It's a very nice hotel, and I thank them for the invitation. All right, okay. Guess who was at the Grand Prix yesterday? Let's bring up this picture. There you have it. If you notice, this is courtesy of Cole Caufield's Instagram account, and you'll notice that the one wearing the blue jacket and the beige pants is none other than Pierre-Luc Dubois. Now, this wouldn't be the first time that Dubois and Suzuki hang out together. They were shooting pucks together last summer, I believe, in Boisbriand, if memory serves me well, along with Nick Suzuki. We also have to mention that they have the same agent. I mean, that never hurts. Pat Brisson represents both of them. And by the way, Pat Brisson was at the Grand Prix yesterday. And we saw pictures of Pat Brisson with Pierre-Luc Dubois. And so this one's courtesy of Cole Caufield. So fueling the rumors, huh?
I guess so. I guess certain people will interpret that however they will. I think I saw Jack Hughes in that photo also, unless I'm mistaken. Look, like Pierre-Luc Dubois lives in Montreal during the summer. Let's put all the speculation side out of it, based on a picture. Look, I have been touching base with sources ever since Elliot Friedman reported that the Los Angeles Kings are interested in adding Pierre-Luc Dubois, and that might be a destination he'll consider. I think there are a few destinations he would consider for a long-term contract. Everybody who I've spoken to still suggests to me that Montreal is his preference. Whether or not that weighs into Kent Hughes paying the asking price on the Winnipeg Jets and paying the asking price on the contract is a different story, because whatever that contract is, and I don't know if it'll go as high as what's been reported, that it'll be $9 million a year over 8 years. It will be high enough that it's going to break that salary structure that he had intact with Suzuki and Caufield. And if only for the fact that it's a player in a different situation, a guy who's a year away from unrestricted free agency, and you're mostly buying up unrestricted free agent years. I think the Canadiens are interested in this player. I think they are looking at other options in terms of bulking up their center line, not necessarily for right now like Pierre-Luc Dubois would do, but for later on, as we've heard about, rumors of them moving up in the draft. There's two elite centers in that top four. And if they're able to accomplish that, maybe it takes away some of the incentive to get a guy like Dubois and sign him to that type of deal. But I think it would be extremely rare that they would be able to make that type of move. You almost never see it happen that somebody moves into the top four of the draft. And if they miss on that opportunity, if it is something they are indeed trying very hard to do, which it seems, those reports are accurate, originally reported by Alex Gascon of Radio Canada, watch out. All bets are off.
At one point, I wasn't sure I wanted to talk about this all that much, Pierre-Luc Dubois, because he had a contract till the end of the season with the Winnipeg Jets, and he was not going unrestricted free agent. He was going restricted free agent, and he would have to sign another contract. But since then, of course, we're hearing from his people that they have demanded a trade. So they don't want to sign one more year, and they want to get it over with this summer, and they want to go somewhere else. So since the whole world is talking about it, especially here in Montreal, we'll talk about it too. I know that when they gave Caufield $7.85 million and Suzuki has $7.875 million, they wanted to maintain Caufield under that hierarchy of Suzuki being the highest paid. But that's because, of course, the condition also being that Caufield was coming off of an entry-level contract. This is a different story altogether, like you just pointed out. Pierre-Luc Dubois has been in the National Hockey League for about 6 years. I think he's going to turn 25 soon, and you're going to have to buy up unrestricted free agency years, and that usually comes at a premium. Having said all that, the fact that the Canadiens would, despite a player not being happy in his previous environment, despite a player probably not having played to the potential that was seen in him when he was drafted, but he still hasn't entered his peak, and I get that. Despite a player coming with a certain reputation, that the Canadiens will just open up the vault and sign him and pay him more than their captain. To me, this is something that the previous management team would do, and I didn't think that this management team would do. And I know they haven't done it yet, and maybe I'm way off on this one, but there's just, as much as everyone would be excited to see Dubois in a Canadiens uniform because he is a good player, this just doesn't seem like something they were set out to do when they took over. Am I wrong here?
I mean, when they took over, did they know that Pierre-Luc Dubois absolutely wanted to come play in Montreal? I don't know if that was necessarily on the radar. As far as what they will or won't or might do, that's the great unknown. You could talk to any amount of people around the hockey world who will tell you they will. There's plenty of people to tell you that they won't. I can't tell you exactly what's going to happen. I was asked in my draft preview today to make one bold prediction, and my bold prediction was that they will trade for Dubois. And it's based on a couple of things. Like I mentioned, I think trying to move up in the draft is an unrealistic kind of situation. I don't see that happening.
Me neither.
And if they whiff on that, one thing, if they really are trying as hard as they can to get one of those top two centers in the draft, it's because they've placed an emphasis on the most important part of the lineup outside of the net, which is making sure that you can win the middle of the ice. It's something they haven't been able to do for decades. I think there's a lot of Canadiens fans out there who have, first of all, let's tackle the whole narrative of, Dubois has a reputation of not wanting to be here and not wanting to be there. If he wants to be here, then what does that have to do with anything? I don't think it has. If him forcing his way out of Columbus because he didn't want to continue playing there, and him leaving Winnipeg because that's not where he wants to be long term when he becomes an unrestricted free agent, has nothing to do with him wanting to be in Montreal. It's not a red flag as far as I'm concerned.
It is for me, Eric. Playing in the National Hockey League is a privilege, and you go where they want you to play.
Okay, but now
you go where they want you.
But now he's in a position to go where he would like to go, provided that team wants him.
Yes and no. He should be in that position in a year from now, but he's forced a trade.
Well, yeah, exactly. And let's not talk about Pierre-Luc Dubois like he's the first player to ever do that. First of all, it's a very common thing in the NBA. It's becoming more commonplace in the NHL, where players are realizing they have the power and the authority to make those types of decisions. Look at Matthew Tkachuk a year ago and how that worked out. And you could be looking at a lot more players beyond Pierre-Luc Dubois who are in the same situation. There's at least one on Winnipeg who could be doing exactly that, in Connor Hellebuck. I just don't think one thing has to do with the other. If I was the Montreal Canadiens, knowing that he wants to play in Montreal, I wouldn't be concerned about the fact that he forced his way out of Columbus and Winnipeg. These are two things that are...
That's not a red flag to you that he wanted to be traded and that they smelt an offer sheet coming. This according to Aaron Portzline, who has connected as they come in Columbus, previously with the Columbus Dispatch and now with the Athletic. And Jarmo Kekalainen, worried of that thought, made a couple of trades so that he can make some cap room so that he can match any offer sheet. And Dubois, when seeing that they were not going to accommodate him and traded him, decided to go out and put in the one shift with probably the least amount of effort in the history of the National Hockey League that went viral, and you can still find it today on YouTube, because that was his way of saying, you don't want to trade me? Well, this is what you're going to get from me if you're going to keep me, so you might as well trade me. That's not a red flag for you, Eric?
Well, first of all, we're not in the inner workings of what happened between Pierre-Luc Dubois and John Tortorella and the situation that was going on there. We do know what's happening in Winnipeg, where there's a group of players that no longer want to be a part of that team, and it's been proven that core was not going to work out. And we are both speaking English, and I'm pretty sure I just said it's not a red flag for me, considering that if you're the team in Montreal that wants to acquire him and he wants to be here, then it's got nothing to do with anything. I want to move on to a more important part, which is are the Montreal Canadiens a better team with Pierre-Luc Dubois if they end up paying him between $8 and $9 million? And I'm going to tell you exactly how I feel about it, not based on how they feel about it or how anybody else feels about it. I think they absolutely are a better team. I think if you are looking at a decades-long void up the middle and you have a chance to fill it with that type of talent and a guy who's proven that he can perform quite well in the playoffs and has that type of frame to really support the structure that the Canadiens have, I'm looking at green flags, not red flags. And I also think, the whole idea of, Kirby Dach is developing and he looks to be a better center. And look at the teams that have won the Stanley Cup. Go back to the Tampa Bay Lightning and their contention since 2015. They have had several centers displaced to the wing. This is not a disadvantage or a problem.
You're right.
It is a solution. And if you have Suzuki, Dubois, and Dach up the middle and transferring to the wing between Dubois and Dach, it's from one game to the next or whatever it is, you're a much better team than if you're not faced with that question of which one of them is going to play center.
All depending on what you do with your cap, because there's another team, the Toronto Maple Leafs, that had at center Austin Matthews, John Tavares, and Ryan O'Reilly. Hard pressed. That should
have worked out pretty well for them.
Hard pressed to find another team in the National Hockey League that has three better centers than that, and they got bounced in the second round. Having said that, I think the last 10, 15, 20 years has shown us that for the most part, the deepest teams at center are the ones that win the Stanley Cup more often than not. I will give you that. I'm not interested in paying Pierre-Luc Dubois $9 million a year, though. I understand. Look, we can go back and forth, but it's probably to no avail. I understand that you said that if you're the Montreal Canadiens, that you don't care what happened before. What you care about is Pierre-Luc Dubois wanting to join your team. I don't disregard the past. I care about that stuff. And I understand he wants to play for the Montreal Canadiens. That's fine and dandy. But the way he handles certain situations talks to me about a certain professionalism or a lack thereof. And for me, if I'm the Montreal Canadiens, that's important to me, Eric.
I think it's easy to sit here and judge as Tony Marinaro or Eric Engels. At the end of the day, we don't know the inner workings of those situations. We just don't. We don't know what the dynamic was between Tortorella and Dubois. We don't know. I mean, it's pretty clear what happened in Winnipeg, where it's not as if Pierre-Luc Dubois was an underperforming player. He was their best player this year. He was their best player this year. And coming out of the series with Vegas, Jonathan Marchessault, who's the playoff MVP, said he was Winnipeg's best player in that series. So I just don't. To me, I'm not saying you completely disregard things that have happened in the past, but we are talking about a player who's, what, is he 25 years old?
He'll be 25, I believe, next month.
Okay, he'll be 25. All right.
Yeah.
So
yeah, he's not even in the prime of his career. I'm very Eric. I'm very
he's not
intrigued
even in the
very,
prime of his life.
I'm very interested in that. Yeah, for sure.
Players
100%.
make decisions as young people. Not everybody comes in the mold of a Nick Suzuki who's wise beyond his years and is extremely mature. Anyways, I'm not here to make a whole campaign for Pierre-Luc Dubois' image and rehabilitate it based on his decisions in the past. I'm talking from purely a hockey perspective. If you have a player of his ilk who wants to be with your team, you explore that to the depths of how much does he want to be with your team, to the point where he could potentially fetch a $9 million number on the open market, and maybe he takes 8.75 or a little bit less to play for you. Whatever it is, I would argue it's going to be more than Suzuki if it's here in Montreal, just based on the situation and him buying up more unrestricted free agent years, if that's what the GM has to do. But from a pure hockey lens perspective, and I know there's a lot of Canadiens fans who feel the way you do, Tony, that they're concerned about that past and that checkered history of forcing his way out of places, that they're not sure he's worth the price tag and this and that. For me, it's pretty simple math. Does he make you a lot better up the middle? Yes. And have the Canadiens had a player like him up the middle in the last 3 decades? No. And if you have a 1-2 punch of him and Nick Suzuki and Kirby Dach as a 1B option at any point, if you have injuries, or as a 3C, or as Dubois moving down to 3C and Dach moving up, or them playing on a line together and exchanging on the faceoffs, and what is the big concern over an 8.75 kind of cap hit, if that's what it ends up being, when you have Dach for another 3 years at 3.75 or 9 or whatever it is? I think the salary structure has been handled really well by the Canadiens. To me,
Eric,
there's no debate as to whether or not they're getting better if they get this player.
Eric, everyone knows they're getting better because he becomes probably one of the top 3 best players on the team. So everybody knows that. Perfect. That's out of the way. What's the concern? I'll tell you what the concern is. The concern is that you're going to lock yourself up long-term to a player who, albeit was Winnipeg's best player and had a real good season, but a player who has had trouble finding consistency in regards to his intensity and bringing it night in and night out. And you know that long-term contracts, it's easy to get complacent. It's very easy. And those are things that I think you have to think about, right? Giving the long-term contract to a player who one night competes like he wants it and the next night doesn't compete.
What's he done in the playoffs?
First
6 games in the National Hockey League playoffs: 2 goals, 2 assists.
Okay.
Next 10 games, 2 goals, 3 assists. Next 10 games, 4 goals, 6 assists. Next 7, 3 assists. Next 5, 2 and 2. We're not talking about an inconsistent player in the playoffs. We're talking about a guy that comes and brings the game. I mean,
we're talking about a player.
Has he had an off series here or there? Sure. Has he been a solid playoff player? Yes. And that's the type of player that you want to have on your team, especially up the middle. I can't repeat it enough. The Canadiens haven't had one in 30 years. They just haven't. Nick Suzuki has been fantastic in the playoffs. Does Nick Suzuki play the style of game that Pierre-Luc Dubois does? No. There's some good balance in that. If you have the two of them, there's some even better balance if you have Kirby Dach too. And maybe it's not Dubois. Maybe it ends up being Leo Carlsson or Will Smith, and this problem is no longer a problem that you need to solve. Maybe Dubois wants to be in LA as much as he does in Montreal. Maybe there's a couple other teams in the mix that, drive up the price to the point that the Canadians don't want to pay it, and that'll be understandable. But I think, and I could stand corrected, that this management team knows that this is an area where they absolutely have to get better, regardless of what you see the potential of Doc is, and that combination of the two of them together. You need a lot of really high quality centers in your lineup year after year, year over year, to compete and contend for the Stanley Cup year over year. And that is exactly what these guys said they want to do with this team. They don't want to just make the playoffs. They want to build the right way and become a team that has a chance to win year over year. And that doesn't happen if you don't have those types of quality players up the middle.
So, yes, 26 points in 38 playoff games definitely is good.
It's not just points. Like, watch him play. It's not just the points. He's got a style of game that is very hard to contend with in the playoffs.
Yeah, well, his coach wasn't too fond of the last game he played in the playoffs, which was the last game of the playoffs. I mean,
he wasn't too fond of the entire team's performance, and all kidding aside, I mean, I think it's very clear that things are not going to work out in Winnipeg for that entire core. But I'll take Jonathan Marchessault's word that he was the best player in the series.
Yeah, no, I'll take his word that he was the best player in the series. But, every now and then you want your best player in the series to be on the winning side of the series. Like, when you're in the National Hockey League for 7 years and 2 years you don't make the playoffs, and 3 years you get bounced in the first round, and 2 years you get bounced in the second, it's okay. It's not the end of the world.
They also smoked Tampa in 4 games when he was in Columbus. They beat Toronto in the bubble, and he was very much the driving force in those things happening with teams that were considered to be far.
By the way, I think it was that. Was it that? Was it 3 times eliminated in the first and twice eliminated in the second? I think, but anyway.
I don't really know. But what I do know is that one player doesn't win you or lose you a series. If that were the case, or the Stanley Cup for that matter, Connor McDavid would be a multiple-time champion.
Granted. I think so. And it kind of bothers me when we talk about this subject, because at the end of the day, you have to say yes or no. Like there's almost no in between, right? And I don't want to make it sound like I don't think Pierre-Luc Dubois is not a good player. Like, obviously, he's a top 3 player if he joins the Montreal Canadiens, right? He's going to be in that discussion with Nick Suzuki. That's it. It's going to be them. Like there's Nick Suzuki. There's going to be Cole Caufield. There's Pierre-Luc Dubois. Caufield will be a better scorer. Suzuki will be a better playmaker, and maybe Dubois might even end up being the best package out of all of them, right? So I understand all of that. Once again, I'm just worried about the price to pay, and I'm worried about the amount of years on the contract. And if I knew that already, maybe I'd feel a lot better about the situation.
It's not Pierre-Luc Dubois at all costs. Let's put it that way. Okay,
I'm happy you said that.
Canadians have to give up the type of package that would be untenable to Winnipeg. Like, the type of, I don't want to start throwing names into it and create some sort of rumor where I get radioed. But if the price is so exorbitant, and then the contract doesn't come in at a number that, is reasonable, then obviously they're going to look in other directions. But I'm not mincing my words on this.
Yeah,
I think they are a much better team if they get this guy. I think they are a much better team if they end up having to go to Pierre-Luc Dubois and Kirby Dach and say, sometimes one of you is going to have to play the wing, and sometimes one of you is going to have to play on the third line. Like, they're a much better team if they're faced with that problem and have to have that discussion.
And you know what? He's not only a good hockey player, but we hear he's a very, very good man. Of course, we know he took over a foundation last year, so he really wants to put his stamp on Montreal and the good things that he'll do here in La Belle Province. We also saw a tweet on the weekend from my buddy Kevin Raphael of TVA Sport. Pierre-Luc Dubois signs an 8-year contract with Team Haiti. Despite all the attention on him, Pierre-Luc Dubois is not hiding. He spent the day with some youngsters at Boisbriand and met all of his fans. He was there from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. A real one. Proud of you, Pierre-Luc. And here you go. Andy Maillet-Pressoir on the left and Kevin Raphael on the right. And there you have it. Pierre-Luc Dubois right there in the middle. I mean, that's he's been great. By all accounts, everything I've heard, he's been absolutely amazing with the fans this summer and was amazing with the fans a year ago. And, part of it is a really cool story because he reminds a lot of people of Vinny Lecavalier in terms of being a big centerman. Vinny was probably a little bit bigger. Vinny was probably, over 6'4", and Pierre-Luc's probably about 6'2" or something. But, he reminds a lot of people of Vinny. And Vinny, of course, there was a trade that Bob Gainey tried to make to get Vinny Lecavalier that was nixed at the last hour there by the ownership group of the Tampa Bay Lightning, and it never happened. You always wondered what could have been. And here's an opportunity for something to happen. So we'll continue to monitor the situation. I mean, this is the story in Montreal right now. Are the Canadiens going to make a trade for Pierre-Luc Dubois?
I mean, how could
and if Michkov is available at 5, are they taking him? These are the two stories, right?
These are two stories, and deservedly so, because how often you hear about a player of Pierre-Luc Dubois' ability, a homegrown talent, a Quebecois, French-Canadian player who wants to be here in Montreal and be in that cauldron and be under that pressure. Is he willing and wanting to play in LA potentially? Is he willing and wanting to play in Boston potentially?
Who can blame him?
Could a rental situation in Colorado, as I brought up to my buddies Elliot Friedman and Jeff Merrick, be appealing to the Avalanche with them out with Landeskog, and he could go there for 1 year and then hit free agency and decide to come over here or wherever he wants to go on a long-term deal. It's something I could envision happening.
That's interesting, Eric.
But everybody I speak to, around this situation says that his top destination of choice is right here in Montreal. Yeah. If you're the Canadiens, there's no way you're ignoring that. I can't tell you that it's Pierre-Luc Dubois at all costs. And yes, this is an exhausting topic, and it's been exhausted throughout an entire year and ever since Pat Brisson made his comments last summer. And it will continue to be exhausted until Pierre-Luc Dubois is playing for somebody else other than the Winnipeg Jets or the Montreal Canadiens. But so long as that possibility is alive, I have to believe that Ken Hughes is having several conversations with Pat Brisson about what a contract will look like, and several conversations with Kevin Cheveldayoff on what a fair trade would look like. The one thing I like about the Canadiens is if you look at their trades, and they've made a lot of them since Ken Hughes came in here, they're fair deals. These are not deals where they're trying to fleece the opposition. They're trying to get the type of deal done where both parties walk away and say, okay, this worked out fairly and justly. I don't think they're going to sit here and completely lowball the Winnipeg Jets if they're serious about Pierre-Luc Dubois. I think they will make an offer that they believe would be competitive. Are they going to pull down their pants? No. They don't need to do that, and they're not going to do that. And then the real question is need. If, like I said, they're able to move into the top 4 of the draft, that need is suddenly evaporating, right? And maybe, and this is purely my own thinking, if they are pushing as hard as some people believe they are to get into the top 4 in the draft, it's because they don't believe that the price is fair on Pierre-Luc Dubois, and that with other teams coming into the fray, it's been jacked up to the point where they don't want to get involved. So let's see what happens.
Okay. Eric, I didn't pull down my pants when I went to Murphy Clinic, but I did roll them up. I even took off my shirt at one point because I had laser hair removal done to my legs and to my chest. They're an aesthetic clinic specializing in medical aesthetic care. They offer permanent laser hair removal as well as a wide range of treatments for skin problems such as acne, rosacea, fine lines, and more. They currently have 2 clinics, one located in Montreal, Shop Angus, and the second on the North Shore in Terrebonne. They're also opening soon in Quebec City. Visit murphyclinic.ca or on Instagram at Murphy Clinic. All right. The accelerated rebuild.
Oh, hang on. That was just what a transition that was.
Thank you very much. Well, there's some in this business that are better than others. And, unfortunately, some radio stations.
Well, there's some that are smooth. There's some that are smoother. Both
smooth operator. Yeah. Smooth. Thank you, Eric.
Now you're literally smooth. You get the joke? You're literally smooth.
Yes. I'm very, very smooth. Okay. By the way, I have already done laser hair removal on the face, but I got to go for about 5 or 6 more treatments.
What was that spray bottle you pulled out a couple minutes ago.
That's just because I like the wet look, and it accentuates the curls, Eric. Accentuates the curls. Plus, everyone that watches us on YouTube Live, Facebook Live, Twitter Live, they've come to appreciate it. And every now and then they ask me to spray the hair. So I have done the face, I've done the chest, I've done the armpits, I've done the legs, and we'll see what's next. Use your imagination. All right, okay. I'm a modern man, Eric. I'm a modern man. The accelerated rebuild.
Never going to be able to get that out of my imagination now. This is...
Hey, I have that effect on people.
What taking a sharp turn to the left here. Okay.
That's funny that you say sharp turn the second that I grabbed a Sharpie. It's pretty cool the way things work out.
Everything's so ironic.
Yeah, I always have two in my hand just in case I want to give myself my autograph. All right, okay. Man, I'm crazy. Eric, the accelerated rebuild. Jeff Gordon and Kent Hughes brought it up a couple of times.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you say, well, they probably didn't know that Pierre-Luc Dubois was going to be available, but now he is. Is this part of the accelerated rebuild? Would this be it? You go after a player like that. Now you've told your fan base that you had told them patience in the rebuild and stuff like that. Now you're all in. Like you're going. Like I'm not going to tell you you're a Stanley Cup contender tomorrow, but clearly you got a good chance of making the playoffs.
I mean, if it's on the table for them, then absolutely, it's an accelerant. I mean, we went over all the details. I'm not going to repeat myself, but 24 going on 25. It's not like you're buying up a UFA at 28, 29 and for 7-8 years until he's 37. You're buying his best years for a player that's already quite good. There's several ways that they can accelerate the rebuild, though, and the opportunities they have in front of them. One is that they have a very deep prospect pool. 2 is they have 11 picks in the draft. 3 is that they are angling for any deal that looks remotely similar to the opportunity they were given with Kirby Dach. And to get Dach at a low price, relatively low price, even if a first rounder was in that deal, sign it, and it becomes a much lower price when you're able to sign him for less than $4 million for 4 seasons. Take the pressure off him, take the pressure off yourselves, create a salary structure by which you can continue to add to your team. When you get Caufield done at the number that they got him done with, which again, it's a good deal for Caufield based on the structure of it. Great deal for the Canadians based on them keeping Suzuki above and Suzuki at a cap hit that's going to look pretty good down the line also.
Yeah.
Those are all the methodologies they're going to improve. Another is that they're picking either 5th or better, or maybe a little bit lower because they see a player that they would have taken him anyways at 5th and they can recuperate assets to move down.
Yeah.
So, when you're a GM in this league, what do you pray for? You pray to have as many options as you could possibly have to make your team better. The Canadians have all of them. They have all of them. There's money coming off the cap. There's players from their roster they could deal from. There is a deep roster pool at specific positions where they can afford to part ways, like they did last year with Alexander Romanov to get Dach. And there is going to be a lot of movement in the market and a lot of quality players available outside of unrestricted free agency, which I don't think will be a major channel that the Canadians will explore this summer. I think, trades, though, are very much available to them. And I honestly think for a second straight year, outside of Bedard going to Chicago, all eyes are going to be on these guys. I mean, you got St. Louis in there who's looking to make some crazy changes. Calgary should be a bit of a wild card too. But like the real drama of the draft starts with the Montreal Canadiens, and it could very well end with them if they end up with one of the best players coming to them via draft. And they've made a trade to make that happen, or they stay put, or they go down, and they pull off a trade, whether it's for Pierre-Luc Dubois or somebody else. But I'm expecting some things are going to happen here.
Yeah. Speaking of which, you came out with a piece today on Sportsnet and sportsnet.ca regarding the draft. Now, we're going to get a little bit into it, and we're not going to get into everything because it would be my intention to have you join me 1 week from today, next week on Monday. The draft goes in 9 days from now. So if all goes well, you join me a couple of days before the draft, and we'll talk to you about what you're hearing at that point, whether or not the Canadians are going to take a page out of the same book that they read last year and deal a defenseman at the draft for a couple of draft picks, then take those draft picks and flip them somewhere else for a trade. But Michkov, we touched on the most important story, which is the Pierre-Luc Dubois story, and the other one is the Michkov story. To Michkov or not to Michkov? Are you ruling out the Canadians drafting Michkov if he's available with pick number 5?
No, but most people I speak to are. I've touch base. Obviously, Combine went down. Ken Hughes made his comments. He certainly didn't dissuade the notion that he is probably looking in every other direction. Like, I am so careful around this time of year in terms of what I buy into, especially comments. I was the same as anybody else in my draft preview, writing about Ryan Leonard and David Reinbacher. These are names that we're hearing around the Canadians, but it takes on a new level when Ken Hughes is asked specifically about Ryan Leonard at the Combine and says, he plays in the style of the Tkachuk brothers. Then it becomes, they want this kid, and that that's who they're taking. It's really easy to draw a line between those two things and make it shorter and shorter and shorter, right?
He's on a lot of people's wish list because they don't really have that kind of player now. Yeah. Luke Tuck, they say, has the makeup to be that kind of player, but Luke
not
Tuck
the offensive upside though.
No, he doesn't have the offensive upside of a Ryan Leonard. And Luke Tuck, if memory serves me well, was drafted in the second round, mid-second round, and so this is an upgrade. When we're talking about, wow, a Tkachuk kind of player. Still, a lot of Canadians fans are really disappointed the Canadians didn't draft Brady Tkachuk, and now you have a chance to draft a player who resembles that kind of player.
Yeah.
Jeez.
I just think you have to be really careful about what you hear around this time of year, and everybody's running away with what they're hearing here. And I'm as guilty as anybody. Like I said, I wrote it in my preview for Sportsnet that's out today about the fact that, you're looking at Ryan Leonard, you're looking at David Reinbacher, and that the conversations I had are kind of striking Michkov as a possibility. But I'm not striking it because the Canadians have had a lot of time to do some due diligence on the player.
Yeah.
They won't confirm, and nobody will, who Michkov plans on meeting when he gets to the draft, and whether or not the Canadians are among the teams. I have to think every single team is interested in meeting with the player, and I would think the Canadians are in that list too. I'd be shocked if they weren't.
Based on what I'm hearing, they are, Eric, and they're going to have to, because the optics of them not being in, it just doesn't look good. Now, you can pass on him.
I don't think it's just that. Like, I think people are suggesting that they have no interest in this player, and I think that is a mischaracterization of the situation. I think there are some players that they may have more interest in, and those players they are fearful are going to go ahead of them in the draft. As far as having zero interest, I would be really shocked. This is an extremely talented player, is being hailed as the second most talented player in the draft. They're going to do their homework, and they're going to try and meet with him, and they're going to try and find out everything they can before they make any types of decisions on what's going on. And I'll tell you, like, there's a lot of smoke screens out there too. I'm not sure which information the Canadians are happy gets out there and which information they'd like to keep closer to the vest. But I do know that they'll be thrilled if everybody's guessing. And there is a situation here where they feel, and where I would think that they would feel, that everybody is guessing, and that's exactly what they want people to do. They don't want anybody knowing what their intentions are. And I think reports about them wanting to move up in the draft are not necessarily coming from their group, and move down, same thing. And the fact that so many possibilities are being tabled to me in discussions with different people around the league in terms of what they're going to do, tells me that they're putting up a couple of these screens because they want to keep everybody guessing too.
Would you be surprised if they drafted a defenseman?
No. But I will say this, Ken Hughes was very clear that if he sees two players as equal, that's when organizational need comes into the equation in terms of being a tiebreaker. If you want to look up and down the lineup, this is the team that finished 5th from the bottom last season.
Yes.
They have plenty of needs. It's not just one.
And right-handed defenseman is definitely one of them.
They have a need at right-hand defense. Absolutely. They have a need up the middle. They have a need on the wing for a type of power forward like Ryan Leonard. They have a need on the wing for the type of talent that Michkov has. There's plenty of needs. They have goaltending needs. So to sit here and say, oh, like they absolutely need to fill right-handed defense, and so it'll be David Reinbacher. I think there is a lot of appeal in the player. I think there's a lot of people that feel he's the best defenseman available in the draft, and it's pretty rare that the best defenseman in the draft slips beyond 5. It's pretty rare.
You know what? So, I wasn't initially thinking that they were going there, but it's a real possibility here. You take a look at what they have at right-handed defense, and they have David Savard, they have Logan Mailloux, and they have Justin Barron. And like you said, if they believe at one point that two players are even, at that point they'll go by organizational need. Now, I think it's pretty
they have Jonathan Kovacevic also.
They do. I think it's hard.
And Chris Weidman.
Come on, let's be honest here.
Well, he's there.
Yeah. Okay. I think it's you rattled me with that Chris Weidman now. Like you made me like you made me lose my train of thought. Like, I'm rattled now. I'm rattled with Chris Weidman.
He's still a part of the team.
He is still a part of the team. Yes. But it's rare that players are even from a talent perspective, but I mean it's definitely a possibility for sure. There's no doubt about it.
Well, talent isn't the only part of the equation here.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what people have to keep remembering here, because as the draft Michkov or die crowd continues to beat their drum.
Yeah.
They don't know the player. And there's a lot of people out there on the hockey world right now that they wish they had a better handle on who the player is. They're going on video scouting. And I had a chance to talk to him. Ken Hughes said at the combine, nobody in the organization has talked to the player as of that date a couple of weeks ago. I don't think any of the fans are talking to Matvei Michkov unless I'm missing something. So it's not just talent. There is a lot that goes into what you would consider to be the best player available when you step up to that podium. All I know is this: there's going to be a ton of drama around this team, regardless of what decision they make. If they don't, Michkov, if they stick at 5 and they don't pick Michkov, it'll be a huge thing. If they do pick him, it'll be a huge thing.
If they trade for Dubois, it'll be a huge thing. If they don't trade for Dubois, it'll be a huge thing. Imagine Dubois goes to the Bruins. He would make a pretty good replacement for Patrice Bergeron, by the way. And I wouldn't be surprised if Patrice picks up the phone and says, hey, Pierre-Luc, I want to let you know, I enjoyed my 15 years in Boston, and I think you can win there.
It's of all the scenarios that's been floated, it doesn't make, like, people are talking about the Rangers too. They give up a lot of assets to get Tarasenko and Kane. I'm not sure I see that. The Bruins one, in one respect, it makes sense because of what they have in nets and on the blue line, and in terms of the money that they're going to be paying Pasternak. But in another, it's like, is that the best way to retool their roster based on what they'd have to give up to make that work? It's hard to evaluate.
No, they probably don't want to retool, Eric. I mean, they're I don't know. 135 points. They probably believe that if Bergeron retires and Pierre-Luc takes over, that they could be a Stanley, favorite to win the Stanley Cup next year.
But what if Krejci retires also? And there's different things.
Then Zach has to stand. Zach has to step up.
Yeah.
Look,
I'm just saying, like, we also don't know whether or not Pierre-Luc Dubois wants to be in Boston long term, if that's up to him. But we'll see.
I wouldn't mind living in Boston. It's a beautiful place.
The best thing is, I don't think we're going to have to wait that much longer to find out how this all shakes out.
It's all going to go down pretty soon, eh?
I think there's...
At the draft. Pierre-Luc Dubois going to get traded at the draft?
I think I think that's the most likely scenario. And I think, man, that first round... on a Wednesday? Is that what it is?
On a Wednesday night, yeah. Wednesday night in Nashville, yeah.
That's going to be one exciting Wednesday night.
It really was. This was an exciting Monday. Eric, thanks for taking the time. I appreciate it. And we'll talk, if all goes well, next week on Monday. Is that cool?
Sounds good.
All right, there you have it. Eric Engels of Sportsnet at sportsnet.ca. A shout out to Matrix Home Fitness and matrixhomefitness.ca. Bring it home. Discover a club quality workout in the comfort of your own home. Visit matrixhomefitness.ca. Folks, we told you this already a week ago, but in all transparency, some of the Sick podcasts are going to be pre-recorded out of respect for our collaborators. It's summertime for them as well. And when the sun is out and, we want to try to accommodate everyone, and we don't want them having always to stick around at 10 p.m. live. We're going to have some that are live. We're going to have some that are pre-recorded. And this one here was done a little bit earlier on in the afternoon. All right. So thank you to Eric for making himself available. And I also want to say thank you to Charlie over at Optimal Stretch Clinic. Charlie is at 4710 St. Ambroise, and he specializes in fascia stretch therapy. He and his partner run a great one-stop shop clinic. It's amazing. Sasha gave me a massage a couple of weeks ago that was out of this world as well. You check them out. They're in Suite 312. Optimal Stretch Clinic is the company name. You can check them out on their website. You can check them out on Instagram. They've changed my life because I'm starting to move like I was like 18 again, and it's a pretty good feeling. So thank you very much to him as well. Once again, the Sick Podcast brought to you in part by Playground, Energy Transportation Group, and Bittt at Tibi. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place, starting at 10 p.m. Eastern. For Agnello and Sammy at Master Control. They're Cavallaro. I'm Marinaro.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. The Sick Podcast is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group, driven to be different. LaBie.tb, embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination.